Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime series, proudly powered by leadershipbydesign.co, where we aim to add value to people's lives. You can catch us live every Wednesday and Thursday on ebizradio.com at around 12 o'clock, and we chat everything leadership, coaching, and marketing. You can catch the latest Lunchtime series on all your major podcast channels. And guys, today on our coaching segment, we have co-founder and CEO of NutNest, Ron Nussbaum. Ron, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me today, Kevin.
It's such a pleasure. I'm so glad you could join us. I remember when we first initially had this conversation, I was like, you've really got an interesting story. So don't you want to tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, what you do, and how you got into podcasting? Because you've carved out a niche of note, and it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Akron, Ohio. I went into the Marine Corps when I was right around 22. Spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. I met my wife while I was in the Marine Corps, and that actually ended me up in Michigan. I had no plans on going back to Ohio. I thought I'd go south. I actually ended up farther north than what I originally even started out. So I spent 12 years there. I ended up in residential construction when I was looking for what's that transition? And I had never had any experience in residential construction, but I went in there. I spent over a decade. I've done everything from digging the holes to running the company, leadership, management. I sat on just about every seat on the bus while in my time in residential construction. Doing that, I found out we had some escalated customers, and I didn't want to deal with escalated customers. I didn't think that was the customer experience we wanted to deliver, and it's surely not what I wanted to deliver. So I really dug in deep and looked in the mirror and figured out why is that. And over 90% of it I could link back to communication breakdowns, which lead me into what I do now. Is one night it hit me, how do we fix this? It's a software program, and I got out of bed. I'm a non-technical guy, like Marine Corps construction, now software. That path is crazy right there. I put what I call a haphazard at best PowerPoint presentation, and the rest is kind of history over the last few years, grinding it out, trying to get this developed. About 15 months ago, I was accepted into the 10X incubator down in Florida. I met Jared Yeldon from Project 10K. We partnered, and we actually just went live in January. So we're a customer communication platform for the residential construction industry, and that leads me into podcasting. So I'm the host of Construction Champions podcast, and really my mission is to just help evolve the construction industry. I want to help 5 million people in residential construction with communication, and I want to bust through the status quo. So I now started this podcast, which has got great legs and great traction so far. I have an amazing guest because I have a great network. So I'm bringing on A players and superstars in the construction industry, and we're having closed door conversations for the world to hear. So instead of those conversations happening when doors are closed, we're now opening it up so everybody can hear. How do I get my business from 500,000 to a million or $1 million? I had a guy on there that's doing 25 million a year in concrete. So we're bringing in some big dogs. We're bringing in people that have a heart to help. And that's really what I want to do. I know we connected on that because that's truly all our passions are, to just help and get that knowledge out there so other people can take advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that was, for my listeners, you're probably going, why are we talking about construction? What are we talking about here? And it's not really about, I mean, it's the field that you're in, but I think there's so much more conversation to be had here. It's one thing to go from sort of being sort of in the Navy and in the Army, and you kind of moved
Marine Corps,
and then you went to construction, and now you completely into building a custom communication platform. I mean, that's quite the jump, right? And
yeah,
but what's great about that is that a lot of the time people have that sense of they're not going to be enough or do enough to be able to get to where they want to go in life. And I mean, from being able to go from where you started to where you are today, I mean, that's quite the jump. How have you tackled some of your own stigmas and limiting beliefs around what, first of all, is possible for you, but also that you could become sort of a market leader and create a platform for construction industry in the way that you have? Because I think that's such a fascinating kind of jump that you've made.
Yeah, I find it completely fascinating as well. I think I like to say the universe is never wrong, but it's up to us to figure out exactly the outcome that needs to be created and then take the needed action. Like, this was put in front of me. It's become my passion and what I love to do. Like, I could only get so much done working in the industry. By moving to this and actually serving the construction industry, I can have a huge impact, which really excites me to be able to go do that. Limiting beliefs, I'm a huge 10X guy. I believe in self-development, constantly putting the right stuff in. And that's what starts to get rid of those limiting beliefs, because you start to get that stuff because you're listening to the wrong stuff, or you have the wrong people in your ear that are telling you you can't. I always have a take action mentality, and I just try to get it done, no matter how uncomfortable it is. When I first started in construction, I had never worked in construction. Like, that was a whole deal in itself. I had no background in that. And then when I moved into software, I have no background in that. Same with the podcast. But when you know it's what you should be doing, like, you just have to lean into it. I always say, no bad can happen when you take action without malice in your heart. So if you're not setting out to do bad things won't happen. It'll create an impact. And that really is what drives me, because I know I'm doing something that's going to better the entire industry or just better people's lives. And it's important that I do that. Ron Nussbaum was meant to do this, and I'm fully leaning into that.
And the reason would you agree with the statement that you mentioned taking action? I mean, I have a bunch of nephews and nieces who are kind of moving into their 20s and kind of out of their teens, and a lot of them are really looking at, like, I don't really know what I'm passionate about. I'm not sure if I want to study. I don't know what I'm doing, or they questioning a lot. But, like, just listening to you, I'm also one of those people who I don't necessarily have to know what the next steps are. I don't need to have this big major plan ahead. What I need is to just take action. And because of the taking action, and because I'm filling myself with the right kind of conversations and the right kind of content, it evolves out of something, because I'm actually taking action. And to use your words, it's almost like the universe sort of starts listening in to kind of going, like, I see you taking action towards this thing. What is that all about? And stuff really start evolving and things start taking place. Do you think that's a fair sort of assumption, or a fair kind of comment to make around taking action, actually leaning in towards it like that, is part of building your success that you've got today?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you don't do anything, like, people get in their own heads and they're like, I'm not sure if I want to do this or that, but then they don't do anything. And that's the worst thing you can do. Like, take some action, lean into something. If it's not a fit, you can always change. Like, we live in a world where you can pivot and move. And, like, as I've taken action, I've just grown into other areas. Now, has there been stuff that hasn't worked out? Absolutely. But, you go that way, and if it doesn't work out, you continue on, especially in the tech world. Like, it's all about pivoting and making sure that you're doing, if this doesn't work, do this. Or if this doesn't work, what are we doing to change it so it does work? Or, you have to be willing to take that initial action, because that's what gets the ball rolling. And without getting that ball rolling, you'll never know if you don't like that. Or you might go and do it, and it could be so fulfilling that that's what you do for the rest of your life. But we get in our own heads and cause this confusion ourselves. And I think it's just a lot of just the clutter that you hear out in the world these days is kind of creates some of that, because we have a bunch of people walking around kind of as zombies. Like they want to do other things, but they're just comfortable, and they don't want to get out of that comfort zone and actually try something else. And it's the fear of that failure that could come from it. And I'm all about failure. I think life evolves and has a lot of failure in it.
Yeah.
And that's just the step. That's the stairs. That's the stepping blocks. As you continue to grow, you're going to have stuff that fails. I try new things all the time, and not all of them pan out. But if you're not trying new things and creating that failure, you're just going to be a zombie walking around. And to me, that doesn't appeal. And I don't think that appeals to most people. I think most people want to be out there trying new things and finding what they're truly passionate about, but they get in their own heads and it becomes really cloudy. And then, they see somebody else doing something and maybe it didn't work out. And they're like, oh, I don't want to be like that. What would everybody think? Like, I mean, I've left multiple six-figure jobs to go do other things. Like when I went to the Marine Corps, and then to go do what I'm doing now, like you got to be willing to step out and just go get it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it makes me think of a story I want to share with you is something that just happened to me today and it ties into one of the questions I have for you. But one of my missions is like, how do I add value to people's lives? How do I add value to people's lives? If I'm adding value, then I know value will return. I kind of have this mechanism in my head that, am I adding value? Is this adding enough value at the end of the day? And 4 years ago, we did presentation skills, because I deal a lot with human behavior and and how to present yourself and be able to talk on camera and stuff. And did this presentation skills for a corporate in South Africa, where the executives were really frightened and they'd never done, they were actually presenting to an audience of around 1,000 people. And so they called us in. But I remember when we finished, we spent about a month of working with them. And when they delivered, the day they delivered their presentations, and it was a group of executives that delivered the presentations, the audience was completely floored by how amazingly well the executive had done. But the long story short was, the mission that I had was, how do I add value to people's lives? How do I add 4 years? And the reason why I'm bringing this up, 4 years later, the very same agency that we worked with contacted me today, kind of going, you have been requested specifically to come back and do this again with a whole brand new team. And I'm kind of going, it's that sentiment of having that mission of like, I want to add value. And because I come from that dedicated need and want to be able to do that, 4 years later, people are still kind of going, hey, I want you to help us with this, right? But I mean, you mentioned having a mission as well, right? And one of the questions you have is like, what was your mission, and how did you kind of how does your mission drive you to do what you do today?
So my current mission, I think missions evolve as you continue to evolve as a leader and as a person, and just, as an entrepreneur, those missions will evolve. My current mission is to help 5 million people in residential construction with communication. And there's a multiple of aspects I'm using in the software Nut Nest, my podcast, just myself, like going out and speaking, doing guest appearances on podcasts. I've probably been on 100 podcasts at this point in time as a guest. And that mission comes from just dreaming big. And there's sometimes I go to bed and I'm thinking it's not even big enough. Like, did I bite off a big enough of a chunk? Or, a lot of times I hear, man, that's a huge thing to go out and accomplish. How do you even quantify that? And by disrupting the status quo in the industry, I'll be able to know. Like, because you start to hear right now in residential construction here, the number one customer complaint is communication. They just don't feel like there's good communication. We're going to change that. So that's no longer a thing. I'm going to continue to help educate and help make people in residential construction great communicators. They probably already are. They just don't have the tools to do it because they're really, really good at other things. And one of our core values at NutNest is customer greatness. And my goal is to really just make our customers the greatest communicator they can. Just make them great at it so it becomes something they don't even have to worry about. Yeah. And that's what leans into my mission currently. And, you know, my mission has changed from developing people to, you know, doing just different things. And whatever that state you're currently in is what you have to have a mission for. If you don't have an overlapping thought of where you want to go with the impact you're trying to have, I recommend going and spending some time looking in the mirror and figuring out what does motivate you or what is the impact. And then, you know, just like we talked earlier about taking action, you can go do that. And if it doesn't work out or you aren't as passionate about that as you thought, you can always come back and reevaluate that and then move into something else and try to find that passion.
You know, I just love your take on this. And one of the questions we have here is becoming a champion, right? And being your own. And for me, it's always been a case of, you know, when I was younger, I always put being a champion outside of me. So someone would be my champion, or someone would help me, and someone would, you know, save day. And it took me some time. It took me a long time, but today, you know, I am my champion, right? I'm the champion of the story, and I've learned to, with taking action and having the mission and stepping through the fear, even though I could get 100 no's. Like, it's the one yes that I get. I'm like, okay, cool. That's the thing that keeps me going. And you know, I eventually realized that I don't need a champion. I'm the champion. I'm my champion of my story, right? How do you sort of envelop that and kind of create being a champion?
Yeah, so being a champion, that's near and dear to my heart. I love champions. I love the science behind it. And so every morning I do Be Your Champion 45-second, just live thing. Like, live, this is what's real. Like, most of it's about like what I'm going through in my life. But it's about being your champion, because that's what we have to be. Because if we're not our own champion, we can't create a championship team. Like I said, champions fascinate me because you can look throughout, and I use a lot of sports analogies with this because that's where you can quantify a championship in a winning team that has won that ultimate goal. And when you look, like, you can have a lot of superstars and not be a championship organization. And I think a lot of people strive to be a superstar, but what they really need to do is become their own champion. Because when you look at championship teams, they always have those people that are there to be the absolute best of themselves every day, hold themselves accountable, which automatically holds the rest of the team accountable. So in order to be that champion, for me, if I'm going to be a champion in my family, I have to be the best Ron I possibly can be every day and be my own champion. That's the only way I can do it. Now, you come in like you're a superstar, which I'm guilty of this throughout the years. You think like being the superstar, being the best, being the one that gets it done like the fastest and all of this is the best. But that's a detriment to everybody around you. That's only working for yourself. But once you start to lean into just being your champion and understand that, hey, I'm going to hold myself to a higher standard, I'm going to do this stuff every day because I want to be the absolute best me. So I can be that champion that will then attract the championship team. Because when you're being a superstar, what do you attract? You attract other superstars that are just out doing the best job they possibly can, not aware of what the consequences for any of that is. They're just trying to be that superstar. Now, when you decide you're just going to be your own champion, you start attracting other champions because they're like, oh, I want to be around that guy because, he's humble. He's just getting the job done. He's not out here in my face about it, but look at the results. They're getting stuff done every day. You attract other people like that. And then that's when you start to win championships because you get those people around. Look at some of the greatest teams. Yeah. Like, I'm not a huge Tom Brady fan, but look at what he did at the Patriots. He was never the highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
He brought people around because he understood the end goal is to win championships. It wasn't to sign $500 million contracts for him. He wanted to win championships. He held himself to this high level. I grew up being a huge Kobe Bryant fan. I'm still a huge Kobe Bryant fan. And when you look at how he went through the progressions of just being that champion, the hardest working guy on the team that put in the work and held himself to such a high level that everybody else wanted to be part of that. And he was willing to have those conversations about, look, I'm at the gym at 6 a.m. You better be here on time for practice because I'm here 4 hours early. Or why don't you come in 4 hours early with me? Because I know you want this as much as I do, and let's work on this together. That's what a champion starts to create. And that's a culture you can create within your organizations where you just let people be the absolute best they can and be their own champion. And that, to me, is what a lot of stuff in life is about, is just being your own champion, because then you make everybody around you better.
But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, wasn't it Kobe Bryant that was the one guy that would stand, he would go to practice and shoot hoops, and he would stand there until he shot 100 hoops, whether that took 5 hours or 12 hours, he would just stand there and do it until he got it right? I know some mega superstar did that.
Well, there's tons of stories about Kobe and Michael Jordan staying after games and just they missed a shot, so they just take it over and over and over again because they know putting in the reps is what's going to make them the best. And they want that championship level of status, not status, but they know if they're not willing to go out there and put in the work, the rest of the team won't, because they're the leader on that team. So they have to be that champion.
And would you? So I mean, one of the things that does occur to me around being the champion and being champion for your life is, it's great to pay attention to other people and what other people do, and but as a personal choice, as a personal preference, I absolutely never pay attention to my competition. And I simply do that based on the fact that the moment I do that, I take my eye off what it is I'm trying to achieve and I start comparing myself, right? And it's a very quick way of losing your way or getting, a slight despondent kind of energy into what it is you're trying to achieve. If you're peeking over, over there, on what other people's success might be looking like, because essentially their success is theirs for them, for the sake that they've actually consistently put the effort for their lives and their own championship. For me, it's a case of saying, focus on your championship and what is your championship, and define that for you so that when you've reached it, you didn't do it so that someone could say, oh, well done, you did this. You could sit back at the end of the day for yourself and kind of look back at life and go, yeah, I did that. I consistently got up every day and I achieved that and I worked for it and I made it happen. Do you believe that consistency effort is that the payoff?
Yeah, but I'm gonna shake some of that up because
Yeah.
I'm an out of box thinker on this. Like
Yeah.
I'm out in space somewhere, and a
Yeah.
lot of people can't relate with what I'm about ready to say. I'm a big we component. I look at competition as we need to collaborate and come together. Everything's big enough. Like there's enough out there that will all be just fine. If you have somebody, people need to work together. So I reach out to people that would be considered my competition and have conversations with them on how can we make the industry better together. Because here's how I approach it is that contractor, that's my customer. That's also their customer. What are we doing together to make their life better? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. If we make that contractor's life better, their customer's life's better. And then that makes our life better. And we're achieving what we want. So I think instead of it's we. Competition becomes collaboration if we start to think about this the right way. If I get 1% of the residential construction market share, my grandchildren are taken care of. So why can't I work with somebody that might be considered competition or in the same space? Now this is hard for a lot of people to start to fathom. I get a cold shoulder when I reach out to people because people don't think of it that way. But then I get on calls with people and they're like, yes, this is absolutely true. We should be working together. We should be making more of an effort to just be better for our customers than just to try to be better than each other. And I think that is where the magic starts to happen. And that's what I'm trying to unlock is what does that potential look like for everybody that's involved? And not just in construction, like who would be considered your competitor, reaching out to them, sending a message, being like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I would love to collaborate. I would love to have a conversation with you on what do you think? Because real champions aren't afraid to have that conversation. I mean, if you look at it, like these guys, like these super successful athletes in the off season go train together. Like they're not out like they're training together in the weight rooms or at camps, so they have a lot of the same coaches. Like they want to be around each other because they want to be in that realm of winning and championships. But in business, we tend to separate ourselves because we look at it as it's combative, it's competition, it's I'm out to beat that person. Instead of looking at it as how can we just do better together and have a huge win for our customers. So that's how I'm approaching it. Like I said, it's way out of the box. But I think you're going to start to see more stuff shift that way because I'm having great conversations and we're putting great things in place that are really going to benefit our end users.
I think that it's key to what you're saying there is it depends on how you frame it, right? If you see someone doing well as a co-collaborator, then yeah, what comes out of that is beautiful co-create. It's what we're doing right now. We both have podcasts, we're having a good conversation around it, and my audience benefits and your audience benefits, right? And I love that, and I think it's when you're coming from that perspective and you're understanding, don't see them as competition, rather see them as collaborative partners. It really changes the playing field completely, right? But I mean, Ron, we've already almost run out of time. If we could sort of conclude our conversation in just like sharing some advice for aspiring leaders out there, because for me, I believe that leadership doesn't have an age, it doesn't have a title, it doesn't have a leadership is it's a skill that you learn. And you can learn from a very young age, and it's an evolving skill. And the more you do it, the better it becomes, right? But if you could sort of give some aspiring leaders out there some advice, what would you say, and how would you sum up today's conversation for them?
Yeah, I think today's conversation's been fantastic. I love a lot of the stuff we touched on, and for leadership out there, and being that I've been in a lot of different leadership roles, I made a lot of mistakes, and one of the biggest mistakes that I made was just not being run. So I think what we have to understand as leaders is the foundation of our leadership is ourselves. We have to lean into ourselves and build the skills off of that, because that's what's real. That's what's reality. That's not fake. That's just who you are. In accepting who you are and leaning into it, if we don't do that and we build these leadership skills, we're building not on a solid foundation. And we want to have that solid foundation. So having a good understanding of who you are, take a personality test, understanding that, and then lean in that and build your leadership skills off of that. Like, I'm a high D personality. I'm intense. I'm excited. I understand that. I also have to understand that there's other personalities that are different ways, and I have to be able to adjust how I communicate, but I still have to be run. So that would be my big thing, and what I wish I would have heard in my early 20s is just be the best you. Like we talked about, be your champion, build your leadership platform off of that. Because I think we spend a lot of time trying to develop all these skills to try to cover up who we are. But what we really need to do is lean into who we are, understand it, and then step forward with our best foot with that understanding. Like, hey, this is who Ron is. This is how I am. But I'm going to learn how to be able to be a great communicator or a great leader for this individual or this person. And I'm going to have real conversations because I'm a real person.
I love it. I love it. One of my often sentiments that I often share with people is love yourself enough to give yourself the chance. Like look here and start here, because when you lead from that perspective, then it's an easy kind of road to go down, because you're coming from a good intention, coming with integrity, you're coming from playing at your strengths, right? So I find it. I love that. Thank you so much, Ron. You sent us a whole bunch of links, so I'm choose one. I'm like, if you want to go know more about him, I'll put all the links in the description boxes below. But if people want to know more about you, or get hold of you, or chat to you, and connect with you, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, anywhere. Like you said, I sent a bunch of links. I am on every social media platform. I am working on just being omnipresent and being out there. So if you look up Ron Nussbaum, Ron Wesley on any social media platform, you're going to find me, and I'm active. So reach out on there, send, DM me, shoot me a message, do any of that, and that's how you can find me.
Fantastic. Guys, we've been chatting to Ron Nussbaum, a co-founder and CEO of NutNest. Ron, thank you so much. And thank you for your time. And please come back anytime.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. It has been fantastic. I loved our conversation today.
Me too. Thanks for chatting, and I'll chat to you soon. Cheers for now.